a lot. Thank you, Dr. Rakesh. Now we move towards the penultimate session of the day, that is the percutaneous vertebroplasty and kyphoplasty. As we know that percutaneous vertebroplasty was started to manage aggressive vertebral hemangiomas, but over the past 6 decades, the neurosurgeons have found the applicability of this very fascinating, alluring, as well as rewarding procedure for a wider range of indications. To elaborate and increase our knowledge on this interesting topic, we have a team of very eminent and experienced neurospine surgeons as panelists and speakers. It's an honor and great privilege to introduce our panelist, Dr. Neeraj Vaswada. Dr. Neeraj Vaswada is a consultant spine surgeon. Hello.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yes, sir. I am just introducing you. Is a consultant spine surgeon in Shelby Hospital, Ahmedabad. Dr. Sumit Pawar. Dr. Sumit is consultant neurosurgeon in Department of Pediatric Neuro and Spine Surgery at SRCC Children's Hospital in Mumbai. Dr. Sumit is also visiting consultant in Bhatia Hospital, SL Rajan Hospital, Apollo Spectra Hospital, and many more hospitals in several suburbs of Mumbai. Our third panelist is Dr. Mohinder Kaushal. Dr. Mohinder is Chairman and Managing Director in Trinity Hospital and Medical Research Institute, Zirakpur, Punjab. I welcome you all, sir. Now, I will take the privilege to invite our first speaker of the session, Dr. Subir Zaveri. Dr. Subir is Senior Spine Consultant in Subir Zaveri's Spine Hospital, Ahmedabad. He will be talking on stepwise surgical video of percutaneous vertebroplasty and kyphoplasty. Over to you, sir.
So good afternoon, friends. First, let me thank Dr. Sanjay Bihari, Dr. Jayesh Sardara for having invited me for this SGPGI spine course. Let us take the techniques of vertebroplasty and kyphoplasty in greater detail. Deramond was a radiologist who injected bone cement in the aneurysmal bone cyst at C2 level and was credited with the first vertebroplasty ever. The concept was to inject the PMMA in a liquid state, which interdigitates with the bone trabeculae and hardens with time and within a short time, and it allows weight bearing immediately. The procedure could be done totally percutaneously. The equipment for vertebroplasty that you would require would be a Jamshidi needle, a radio-opaque dye, some low viscosity bone cement, especially one that has barium sulfate, 1 cc syringes, and obviously a fluoroscopy machine. The first step is to align the vertebral body so that the end plates appear parallel, and then that is how you should be eliminating the parallax. The vertebra, if you find that the pedicles are slightly rotated, then for a few degrees you may rotate the C-arm, but if it is greater than 10 degrees, I prefer to rotate the table rather than the C-arm. The pedicle is then marked and the skin is infiltrated with lignocaine about 1 centimeter superior and lateral to the proposed pedicle. So the Jamshidi needle, the purpose is to reach this point, the 10 o'clock or the 2 o'clock position in the pedicle, which is marked with the X. And the Jamshidi needle should start about 1 centimeter superior and lateral to this point of the skin. Once you enter the skin, it should land and touch the transverse process. And so gradually allow the needle to walk on the transverse process till it reaches the junction of the TP and the pedicle. And then once you have the point, secure it by gently hammering it in. And then once you have secured the entry point, take a lateral shoot and see where your needle is, and you may angulate and readjust the needle so that the trajectory is correct. And then this is where you're going to start. So in the AP, when your needle is at the 10 o'clock position, it should be just here at the junction of the pedicle and the lamina in the lateral. Then as you go further in the AP and reach the center of the pedicle, it should reach the center of the pedicle on the lateral. And as you reach further progress and reach the medial border of the pedicle, it should reach the base of the vertebral body at that point. So these are the three important points at which you must take a lateral shoot, especially in the initial phase. Make sure that you frequently check the AP and advance in the lateral when you're doing it for the first few cases, and then you can continue to do it only in the AP thereafter. Make sure that the needles do not cross the midline in the AP, and after inserting the needle appropriately, it should reach the anterior third of the vertebral body. You may also perform a spinal biopsy at the same time, but mind you that please do not attempt it in a case of an angioma. Then if you want to perform a vertevinogram, it is possible. Otherwise, you may start injecting the bone cement. Fill the 1 cc syringes with the bone cement, and then you can do a gradual controlled injection of the cement under constant flow. If you're using 2 ports, you may use both the needles on an alternate manner. If after filling the anterior third, then what you should be doing, you should withdraw the needle up to the middle third and then fill the middle third of the vertebrae as well. An optimum amount of 3 to 4 cc is required to be injected per vertebrae. Excess filling leads to greater vertebral stiffness and can cause adjacent level fractures. Also, remember, do not try to fill the posterior third, otherwise you can land up in complications. Avoid formation of cement tails by rotating the needle once the needle is allowed to get, once the cement is allowed to settle down. And after about 4 hours of the procedure, patient may be allowed to stand. The concept of kyphoplasty is not much different. It is quite similar, and what you can do is you can place a needle through the Jamshidi on a guide wire, and then on it comes a working cannula through which you can put in a balloon, and once the balloon is inside, it is expanded to create a sort of a void in the vertebral body, and in this void you can put in the bone cement, which will go in a much thicker consistency, almost like a toothpaste, and it will be also a much controlled delivery of the cement. Let me show you a quick video of the same procedure. So this was the patient who had a compression fracture of D12, and you can see I am inserting the Jamshidi needle. There I have placed it at its entry point in the lateral and the image. I'm inserting it gradually one after the other. And then as I advance it in the lateral, I also need to check it frequently in the AP as well. Once the needle has inserted in the right position, you may insert a guide wire over it. And over the guide wire, the needle comes out, and over the guide wire then comes a small dilator. Over the dilator, then you get a working cannula. You'll just see that I'm just putting a working cannula on top of it. And then this was the time when we used to do a double port kyphoplasty. Nowadays, we only do a single port because it cuts down the expense to half. There, both the ports are in position now, and that's the inflation of the bone cement of the balloon being done. The balloon is filled with radio opaque dye, And you can see as the camera shifts, yes, that's the balloon coming up. You can see the balloon getting filled up in the lateral image with radio opaque dye. And then in this case, here we are doing the double balloon technique. So you can see both the balloons filling up with the radio opaque dye. Once they have been allowed to live there for a while, they'll compact the surrounding cancellous bone, and then the balloons are removed, and then the cement is gently delivered using these special cannulas where the cement is slowly allowed to gradually get into is filled in the vertebral body. So this was that same patient, D12 compression fracture, kyphoplasty done for his condition, and he became ambulatory very shortly thereafter and went on to do quite well. So this was among the first 4 cases of kyphoplasty which I performed in November 2003. Another case of vertebroplasty, this is inferior end plate of vertebroplasty, D11, that was done. This was a case of D12 superior end plate fracture. This patient is almost 4 years is here, but I know her that she's already 8 years out and she's quite functional at present. This was a case of plasmacytoma, which was done by my professor, Dr. Isidore Lieberman, my mentor who taught me the procedures, and this was what he used to call them as his signature. Thank you, and the house is now open for discussion.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, Dr. Subir, for enlightening our knowledge with your high definition academic video and presentation. I hope our delegates have definitely learned a lot from your presentations and they will use it in their daily practice. The questions will be taken at the end of the session. Now we move towards the second presentation of the session. That is, the content of the presentation is so crucial and vital that none of us as a surgeon can afford to ignore it. That is, complication avoidance, and if at all it happens, how we should manage it. To deliver this very interesting talk, we have Dr. Alok Ranjan with us. Dr. Alok is a very senior and a dynamic neurosurgeon who is very well known pan-India as well as abroad. At present, he is working as Director of Neuroscience Department at Apollo Hospital, Bangalore. Over to you, sir.
What are the complications of vertebroplasty and balloon kyphoplasty, and can they be avoided? The first important thing is, should it be done? Do you really want cement leakage in the lungs, around the vertebral body, in the vein, inside the canal? As comparing both of them to each other, the meta-analysis showed that though there was no statistical difference in clinical parameters of pain and disability index between two groups, vertebroplasty was definitely superior in terms of being fast, less radiation, under local anesthesia, and highly economical, whereas kyphoplasty increased the post-operative vertebral body height, decreased the kyphotic wedge angle, which did not translate into a better clinical result, but also decreased the risk of cement leakage.
Hello.
There seems to be a problem.
Hello, technical team.
Doctor? Hello.
Can you just resolve the issue?
Can you restart it?
The video is playing.
Dr. Alok,
Yeah, this is not the right video. I had sent an updated video after this.
sir, would you like to share from your side? Then it's okay. Then
Let me see.
sure. Take your time, sir. Take your time.
Indication for vertebroplasty and kyphoplasty meanwhile.
Hello, sir.
Can you see me?
What are the complications in vertebroplasty and balloon?
No, sir, not yet.
We have gone through both these procedures. And the
Can you see now?
Yeah, audio visual is clear. You are visible, sir.
Related contraindication is spinal cord compression with neurological deficit. Point to remember.
Sir, your slide is not being shared. We are able to see you as a person.
Why?
Where it is indicated. So, but the points to remember.
Share your screen, sir.
Hold it. Share my screen.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now we can see you.
Perfect, sir.
Can you see now?
Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
Sir, if your voice is embedded in the presentation, then you should mute your presentation. Do not share sound.
So where am I going wrong?
Sir.
We have gone through both these procedures and the techniques.
You just play the video, sir.
Coagulopathy, the related contraindication.
I'm playing that.
Spinal cord compression with neurological deficit.
Fine, sir. Fine.
Remember,
Can you see it?
Yes, completely.
Yeah.
Meta-analysis of randomized control trials have shown
Okay, sir. Perfect.
plastic with greater pain relief, significant improvement in daily
You need to increase the sound.
So it has point. It should a disaster. Between these two procedures, meta-analysis have shown that there's no statistical difference in the clinical outcome, functional outcome. However, kyphoplasty definitely decreased the kyphotic wedge, increased the post-operative vertebral body height, and it was also superior in terms of short-term pain relief. And we could inject a higher cement volume. However, it had a much longer operation time, was generally done under general anesthesia, and much higher material cost than vertebroplasty. In long-term follow-up, found that both anatomical and functional parameters were nearly the same, also in terms of adjacent level fracture and non-adjacent level fracture. The two commonest complications, or rather the commonest complication is cement leak. Infection also can happen, and there are different types of cement leaks. One is in the S type, which is in the segmental vessel, which goes towards the heart and pulmonary blood vessels. And one is B type, which goes to the basivertebral vein and can go to epidural space. But the common complications were paraspinal leaks, intradiscal leaks, as well as posterior leaks. Posterior leaks is the most dangerous. Fortunately, the complication rate was less and chances also was less. There are other complications which have been blamed on these two procedures, such as adjacent level fracture, non-adjacent level fracture, and general systemic complication. We'll come to that later. You do not want a cement leakage inside the canal and paresis or paralysis. You also do not want cement leakage in intervertebral foramina, radiculopathy, which sometimes require medicine or surgical decompression. But you can mostly get away with it. We have this frequent leakage anteriorly, laterally, and we get away with it. But what we really like in ideal case is the cement confinement within the vertebral body with some correction of kyphotic angle even in a very grossly compressed vertebral body where the needle can be placed properly. The cement leakage and complication have been compared with vertebral in both thoracic and lumbar spine, and the only difference was found that in the cement injected, it was found that S type of leakage, which is in the segmental vein which goes towards leading to pulmonary embolism, is higher with a higher volume of cement. Otherwise, cement leakage did not have too much difference in other types of leak. But the most important element was placing of the needle. The medial part of boundary of the pedicle has to be respected. And we must understand that there are vascular channels within the vertebral body. There are special landmarks, and the needle tip should be placed in the anterior half of the vertebral body. Even for balloon kyphoplasty, there are needle placement based on where is the fracture and where is the dense bone, and it should be followed. In a fracture where there is a cleft, it is not important that we reach the cleft and try to inflate it or put a needle and do vertebroplasty. Important to know what is the target. In this patient of multiple myeloma, the pain was in the level of L3 area. Although the MRI scan shows obvious cleft and other lesions in the dorsal spine, and if L3 was not injected, the patient wouldn't get better. What are the risk factors for cement leakage? And meta-analysis shows that cement leakage is higher in vertebroplasty, nearly double to triple times. And the significant risk factor for cement leakage is intravertebral cleft, cortical disruption, cement viscosity, and injected cement volume. Other factors did not make much difference. Now, when we correlated the cement volume to the body volume, the mean volume ratio of intravertebral bone cement to vertebral body was about 25%, and all patients had a back pain relieved. They were followed for several months, although the cement leakage happened in almost 50% of the patient, and it was found that the risk factor for occurrence of cement leakage was more cement injection as well as vertebral wall incompetence. As we discussed, the strong predictor for cement leakage was presence of cortical disruption, large volume of cement, and low bone mineral density. And the additional risk factors were presence of intravertebral cleft and small node. Study has been done whether unilateral and bilateral have some advantage and disadvantage, and it was found that cement leakage as well as cement doses injected was less in unilateral, though the clinical results were nearly the same. Study found to find optimal volume fraction, which gave pain relief. It was found that the dispersion was a better correlation than a localized high volume cement. And intravertebral cement volume of 4 to 6 ml could relieve pain rapidly. And optimal volume fraction was about 20%. As the volume fraction was increased, the incidence of cement leakage also increased. As we have discussed earlier, cortical disruption in vertebral wall and cement fraction percentage were identified as an independent risk factor. Very interesting, the study showed that the dispersion was more important than a localized high volume cement injection. Extensive cement distribution, which is almost 50% of the vertebral body, increased the recuperative rate, both for small cement volume but more dispersion, and large cement volume with small dispersion. So as long as a larger dispersion was there, the results were good. Small cement volume with extensive distribution gave a very good result. But if the cement volume was kept constant, it was found that obviously cement distribution was positively correlated with the restoration rate of vertebral height and improvement of kyphotic angle, which we have seen earlier did not functionally change the outcome. A study has been done with high viscosity bone cement, and it was found that with a high viscosity, leakage was much less, whereas the clinical outcomes were the same. Now, vertebroplasty and infection. Several series have shown that both bacterial and tuberculous infections have happened in the cases of vertebroplasty several months or even in a year after the procedure, and probably the induced trauma causes a small hematoma as a best place for a microorganism to settle when there is a bacteria. It's a case of 80-year-old lady where the vertebroplasty was done and 4 months later was found to have tuberculosis. So point to remember is that in presence of bacteremia or significant sepsis, this procedure should be deferred. Another important point that doing kyphoplasty in an infection can also be disaster. This is a very interesting case of pain following a fall in the bathroom. Region was suspected to be infected because ESR was high, although myeloma workup was negative. DEXA scan showed normal scan. We did a biopsy first, sent for culture, sent everything. Everything came as negative. After a couple of weeks, vertebroplasty was done, patient was better. 2 weeks, 3 weeks later, the patient came with significant symptoms. Decompression was done. It came as a tuberculosis and the patient was treated. Now, new vertebral fracture after osteoporotic vertebral compression fracture compared between BKP and non-surgical treatment. Earlier, it was thought that BKP causes new adjacent level disease, but this study said that it doesn't matter. It can happen equally in conservative treatment. So adjacent level fracture is not the complication of BKP. Can kyphoplasty or even done for osteoporotic vertebral fracture with posterior wall injury? Safe, yes. If the needle is placed well away from the posterior wall, it has been found that it is safe both in trauma as well as in tumor. Now, the procedure faults are the commonest cause of complication: wrong entry point, multiple needle insertions, cement not set properly before injection. A cement should be like a toothpaste as seen in the slide before injecting. Using too much pressure to inject cement, removing needle too early, injecting too much cement, choosing the wrong target, choosing the wrong patient, and don't forget, this procedure has the highest radiation. One has to be careful for long-term complication. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for the elaborate description of the complications as well as their apt management. I think you have shown a very extensive literature search as well as the comparison to find out the results of the procedures such as vertebroplasty as well as kyphoplasty. So now the session is open for discussion, and we will be happy to take a couple of questions from the delegates. Our first question is to Dr. Alok Ranjan, sir. One delegate wants to know that what are the specific indications for kyphoplasty and when to do vertebroplasty?
The indications are the same. However, in a fresh fracture, where you, I suspect that there is a posterior wall defect, I will be much more comfortable doing a kyphoplasty, where I can control it a little better than the vertebroplasty. Other than that, the indications are all the same.
Okay, sir. Now, in continuation, okay, Dr. Zubair,
I have a slight difference. One, we must understand that the primary indication of doing a vertebroplasty is to wait for 4 to 6 weeks. The indication why we are waiting is because majority of these patients are going to respond to conservative care. If you really look at the indications per se for a vertebroplasty, it is ideally after doing a conservative care for 4 to 6 weeks, you can proceed for a vertebroplasty or a kyphoplasty. The reason is that smaller cracks, posterior wall cracks, and these things may heal by that time. If the patient is not responding to conservative care, then those are the indications when you should opt for a vertebroplasty or a kyphoplasty. I agree with Ranjan Alok that if you want to do it in an acute scenario, but that acute scenario should be tailored to specific patients and should not be a generalized statement. That's what my assessment.
It is generally, the literature says that if the vertebral compression is less than 30% and the bone mineral density is not very low and there is no cleft, then by and large, they all subside with conservative treatment. But once you realize that it is much more than that, and if you can demonstrate on a CT scan that there is a posterior wall fracture, then see, in an experienced hand, you can do vertebroplasty anywhere. As well, you can do kyphoplasty, but I will be much safer in a posterior wall defect with a balloon kyphoplasty because I have created a space, I can inject some cement. And as we have seen, we don't have to inject too much cement. Let me tell you, I had one complication of paraplegia when I did a vertebroplasty, and it is the most sickening feeling in the stomach.
True.
It is one of the most sickening feeling. So you do not want that complication, but if you have to do that, you got to be careful.
Definitely, sir. We will be learning from your experience, and it's wiser to learn from your seniors' experience and your own fault. My next question to Dr. Neeraj Vaswada, sir. In your experienced hands, have you ever attempted? Sorry.
Yeah.
Have you ever attempted to do vertebroplasty or kyphoplasty where the posterior vertebral wall integrity is breached? We know that this is absolute contraindication, but its literature says that with experienced hand you can try or you may attempt. So what's your
Well,
take?
I have attempted in one of few of my acute fracture as well when there was a posterior vertebral breach. In fact, we have done few cases of kyphoplasty in metastatic disease as well, where then sometimes the posterior wall is actually gone. So when what we do is we try to do a shiggling technique in those cases where we just when first high viscosity cement one we inject, second we inject cement when it is little less fluid, less viscous, it's almost about to get solidified. So we use a wide bore needle, we try to go as anterior as possible, and controlled insertion of say 0.5 cc 0.5 cc, and gradually we start withdrawing our needle, so there is no pressure while we are injecting the cement. That's where probably kyphoplasty scores over vertebroplasty, because you don't have to insert pressure while doing a cementing. So these are the cases where yes, I would agree with Dr. Subir Bhai that kyphoplasty would score much better. So if you do a controlled cementing, even if you have a posterior wall breach or even a metastatic disease, you can still inject cement safely.
Okay, sir. So your explanation has given birth to another question in my mind. This is my personal doubt. So you have said that you will change the consistency of the cement. So what ratio or what proportion you will change the consistency of the cement? Is your...
I guess not consistency per se. What I'll just we see that it's a dewy state or a toothpaste like consistency, which is more ideal when you try to inject cement. I'll wait a little longer. I'll try to inject more solid cement. Not absolutely solid, but not the classical viscous cement what we inject. So that the moment cement goes inside, there are less chance that cement will spread inside the vertebral body and it solidifies soon. So that's why I'll try to wait for some time. I'll use wide bore cement so that I can inject it easily, even though consistency is slightly getting more solid than the ideal consistency what we want. That is what I meant to say.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Okay, Alok sir want to make a comment.
See, there's a literature describes something called eggshell technique. Believe me, I have tried it, but I have never been happy with it. So I don't know, probably I'm at fault, but I have tried that. That is putting some cement and then again inflate the balloon and create a shell. But I have found it has never created a shell. It has just dispersed it. So although it is described, I have not been able to do it. Masters must be doing it.
No, that is why, sir, I say that yes, I agree that if you use balloon, it is very difficult to control. You don't want. I totally agree. So that's why what I do is I don't put balloon next time. I just inject 5 cc cement. I will wait at a very solidified consistency of cement. Wait for some time. Then will again inject 0.5 cc cement. Sometimes I use double cement packet for the same patient also, because I don't have time to wait for cement to get solidified. So these are the cases where there is malignancy, where there is no posterior wall which is present, completely resolved posterior wall. But in cases where only a traumatic posterior breach, generally anterior well-controlled cement injection is very safe in an experienced hand.
I have shown you in 2 slides in both posterior wall defect in trauma as well as in tumor. The study has been done that as long as you don't come to the posterior 50%, you are reasonably safe,
Absolutely,
but under
absolutely.
controlled fluoroscopy. You can't
Absolutely.
be blind.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's the crux of the story. When you are injecting cement, it has to be on a fluoro mode.
Okay,
Ved
well
Prakash, I have
taken.
a point to make.
Yes, sir. Please.
Yeah, I know I'm intruding into a very interesting session where stalwarts are already there. But I think one comment I would like to make, which I'm sure Dr. Subir, Dr. Alok and Neeraj would completely agree with me, is vertebroplasty is one such surgery where the more experienced you are, the less indications you have.
Yes.
So, all other surgeries with time, you get more and more wings to increase the applicability of the same procedure with all other surgeries except vertebroplasty. With vertebroplasty, time will only clip your wings and you will realize that you have failed more than you have created more happy patients. And that's why I think as we have grown in age, I think we have learned more about strict contraindications rather than increasing indications of vertebroplasty. I hope I have made my point in this.
Yes.
Can I answer him?
Definitely, sir. Definitely. Please.
What actually has happened, you're very true, because my use of kyphoplasty is actually gone down. I achieve almost the same results with the vertebroplasty, but my indications, there are cases where I actually prefer to do a instrumentation above and below the cement rather than to do a vertebroplasty separate. And we have actually already have a paper on it, which is sent for publication. I don't know when we'll get it published, but it's already been sent out. It's not been accepted at a couple of places. So we are still waiting to get it out. But that's the reason why I agree absolutely with what Vishal is saying, that we tend to limit our indications more and trying to use instrumentation in along with, in conjunction with the vertebroplasty.
I agree.
So may I add one point to that? What I totally agree with what Subir Bhai said and Vishal said. Now I'm not worried, immediately post-operatively in my patients, I'm more worried, what will happen maybe, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years down the line to that cement bone interface. I have faced few of cases where an excellently done vertebroplasty patient is very happy, and, patient starts coming 6, 7, 8 months after, and you start seeing, okay, cement is coming out of the bone. So, that is where, you have your, your eyeballs in your hands, I would say. So, I agree that the more you grow experience with vertebroplasty, you would want to put lesser and lesser amount of cement inside.
Ved, you are moved. Ved, unmute yourself.
Hello.
Yes.
Now my next question is to Dr. Sumit. For vertebrospinal Mets lesion, in which we have done the vertebroplasty. So post vertebroplasty status of the spine, is there any change in the radiotherapy regime? What's your experience about this?
No change.
Hello, Dr. Sumit.
Alok can answer.
There's no change. Actually, there's no change. See, for what is the commonest lesion where we put it is a myeloma fracture, which is mainly chemotherapy, and radiation there is very limited value, so mainly chemotherapy, so it doesn't change. For hemangioma, in a hemangioma, if there is a very bad hemangioma, generally we expose and then do the cementing and then do the fixation, so it is a combination therapy. Very few cases where you have just for tumor, you just do this and get out of it. But the radiation therapy does not change at all.
Okay, sir. So my next question is to Dr. Mohinder Kaushal, sir. So in your experience, have you ever proceeded with the significant cement leakage in the spinal canal so that you have to abandon the procedure and go for open decompression?
In my series, I have very limited experience of vertebroplasties. I have, in majority of the cases, I have only done vertebroplasty. I mean, kyphoplasty, very few. And such eventuality never occurred when I have done these procedures. And yes, some cases where it was nicely done, patient subsequently came for follow-up, and when we took the X-ray, there was some cement leaching out from the bone, but patient was otherwise asymptomatic. So I don't have to convert to open or otherwise. That kind of situation didn't arise with me.
Alok, sir, because you have shown us a very...
One case, two cases we had problem. One case on the table under local anesthesia, patient says, I can't move the legs. Nothing can be worse feeling than that. We did an emergency and we found that the cement had leaked in the canal. And one case where patient had radiculopathy where we had to give steroid for some time because of it had gone into the foramina.
Okay, sir. So on table, you took the decision on the basis of patient symptom or radiological appearance. That's my last question.
Radiology will see. You will see the canal. You will see the cement near the posterior longitudinal ligament. You will see the cement.
No, it's obvious. But any spillage in the posterior, in the spinal canal, you will open or significant spillage?
Patient has no deficit. Why should you open?
Yeah, that's what. Clinical as well as radiological.
Clinical.
Okay, sir. I think it has been a very nice and wonderful session, and we have learned a lot from your experience. So with this, we will move out to the last session of the day of this spine course. Thank you very much, sir.